In 2020, because of COVID-19, traveling is out, but there's no reason you can't meet old and make new friends at an Agile conference. The Scrum Master Toolbox podcast teamed up with Tom Henriksen to organize the 4th year of the Agile Online Summit, and you can attend for free. There will be networking events, lots of talks on important topics, and 8 amazing keynotes from Mary Poppendick to Alan Holub, Jeff Patton, who's the creator of User Story Mapping, Neil Killick, who's a no estimates pioneer, Jeff Watts, author of Scrum Mastery, a great book for Scrum Masters, Jeff Gotthelf, Bob Galen, and our very own Marcus Hammarberg, who's the author of the Bungsu Story, a great Agile transformation story. You can get your free tickets at bit.ly/SMAOS2020. All lowercase, all one word. Once again, bit.ly/SMAOS2020. All lowercase, all one word, and the link is also on the show notes. You can get your free ticket or opt for the full digital access that lets you keep all the conference videos forever. And for example, organize Agile learning sessions at work by watching those videos. You can get the full digital access at bit.ly/SMAOS2020. But don't forget, there will be lots of live networking events, so I'll see you at the conference floor. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday episode this week with Arjay Hinek. Hi Arjay, welcome back.
Hey there Vasco, good to see you.
So Arjay, on Wednesdays we dive into what might be kind of one of those hidden yet big areas of the Scrum Master role, the change leadership role that we very often take with teams, with individuals, and of course also with organizations. So walk us through one of those change processes you were involved with, and then take some moments and explain, the tools, the tips, the tricks, the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
Yeah, this actually goes back to the story I told on Monday about my grandest failure, and it was around getting a team or getting multiple teams, essentially a whole organization together in kind of an agile mindset. And that's about coaching culture rather than coaching practice. And, that was what I learned from that, is that I'd gone the wrong direction. I had started coaching them on the tools and then the process. And I hadn't first gotten everybody on the same page about what are our values and principles. Focus in Agile as a practice is that it's a great way to fail fast. if you just go straight at the actions that you take, you're not going to get everybody on board, and you're not going to. In fact, it's not just fail fast, but you're going to fail permanently. And so, with that group, I was about to lose them completely from kind of the Agile approach, and they were going to go back to their old ways of working. But we recentered, and we talked about this model. You may have heard of it, the spine model. I think it was introduced in Agile 2015 at the DC conference. And if you go to spinemodel.info, it's a kind of an open space to learn about it. And just if you picture an inverted triangle, at the very bottom tip is the tools, and just above that is process. And as the triangle spreads out, as you go up from the bottom, you'll run into principles and values. The principles and values is what I call culture. A lot of people think when you see values and principles, you automatically go to the Agile Manifesto. I'm not even talking about the 4 Agile values and the 12 principles that back it up. I'm talking about things like how you treat one another, how people trust one another, all of the things around the healthy aspects of a team, or the inverse is the dysfunctions of a team. So really, I do focus in those two spaces: the dysfunctions of a team, and then the spine model. And they're, curiously enough, one is a triangle pointing upward. That's the dysfunctions of a team, and the other is a triangle pointed downwards, which is the spine model.
It's quite coincidental, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And everything in that triangle pointing up from the dysfunctions piece, really, I apply entirely to the 2 middle sections of the other triangle, which is the culture area. And so what I do is anytime I sit down with a team or anytime a team invites me in or an organization invites me in, whole groups have, the first thing I do is I interview all of the leaders in that organization and ask them questions about their view of their own leadership. And they always want to tell me about their tools and their processes and where it's failing. And I keep pushing back and keep or pulling them back and asking questions about, how do they view their leadership? And when was the last time they told a story to inspire the people who work for them? And it's, obviously I get some very interesting tales from those leaders. And oftentimes I can learn very quickly whether or not there's a dysfunction in the culture. 9 times out of 10, there's some dysfunction. But then I'll also take some time to ask all of the people who are down doing the work, not just the leaders, but the people who are on the teams in the trenches. And I'll ask them similar questions about just even how they perceive leadership, how much power or how much autonomy they feel like they have. And the more I ask them those questions, the deeper I get into the details of where there might be some dysfunction. And from there, I can usually decide what type of workshops I might need to run for that group. Or either if it's going to be across the group or if I need to start at the leadership level. Usually I do end up starting at the leadership level and having some sort of get everybody on the same page as leaders so that they're sending the same information, cascading the same information down across all their different teams. And I start by showing them this spine model. And I ask them where they feel their problems are. And if I just ask the question and just get out of the way, like a good coach does, you'll find that some start arguing about that point on the very bottom, and then others start arguing about maybe process, and some might start talking about principles, but none of them ever point at their actual culture because they always feel like, our culture is fine. Culture happens automatically. And it's like, all right.
It's like asking fish about water.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it because that is exactly what happens. And that's kind of the technique I use. Those aren't, really concrete tools. They're more philosophical, but I feel like kind of from a coaching perspective, it opens the conversation and it gets the clients thinking rather than me telling them, and gets them kind of coming up with, realizing where their problems are.
Get people to tell you what they already know about the things they're going through. That kind of reminds me that as Scrum Masters, one of the things that we do, and hopefully in the long term, not necessarily day one, but is to enable teams and organizations we work with to kind of take ownership and responsibility for their own ways of working. It sounds to me that you're doing that about their setup, right? It could be, you call it culture, but it could be many things like, the unwritten norms, the expectations that leadership has from the teams and teams have from leadership. Like all of those things are part of the unspoken culture that people live within. Is that how you see it?
It is. That's a really good way of putting it. And it leads to one of the other tools that I use is I start with the leaders and I have them sort of define what they think their values are and what the structure is of their organization, how they behave as a team. Because if they're not all on the same page and they don't all agree about the same thing, they're gonna fail miserably. And one thing that happens with especially startups, everybody's on the same page at the beginning, right? All of the leaders all think the same way because they're all driving towards the same thing. But as a company gets bigger and begins to expand or either gets acquired or starts acquiring others, everybody starts developing their own little pockets of, power, and they want to build themselves up. They want to improve their position in the company, and they're no longer working as a single team, as a single set of leaders. So what I have them do is all sit down together and we work on what are the common values that we all have as a group and agree on. And then it's a good old fashioned coaching technique. It's the wheel of life, but I have them apply their values around this wheel. It's a series of spokes. And then I have them rate themselves on where they are now and where they think they need to be. And first we start with where they feel they are now. And then I ask them what they notice about that wheel. How out of balance is it? And then when they point out or when they notice which one or two really needs some improvement or building up, I asked them questions like, so you gave yourself a 2 here and it should have been you think you can be a 6. Tell me what a 6 is. And it forces them to talk about what it is they think they could be. And then I ask them to point out, okay, what's something halfway between this 2 and that 6? And then we get into challenges about, okay, what are you going to do to get there? What are some concrete steps you're going to take? And then we get into dates, start asking things like, my challenge to you is 3 months from now, can you achieve what you just described? And oftentimes, and I give them the opportunity to push back and say something like, well, that's too soon. Like, well, all right, tell me the date that you are going to deliver it by. And it forces them completely into being involved in their own value building and their own teamwork. And every time that I've done this, I've watched them. You can see a new sense of them coming together and a sense of purpose and a sense of unity. And it can't be a bad thing when you've got a group of leaders who all feel like they're back on the same page.
Absolutely. That was a great story, and also quite a lot of tools there for our friends Scrum Masters to go in and dive more into. I'll put, of course, the link to those in the show notes, but there's also quite a lot of questions you asked that I think can be quite powerful when working with teams and leaders. So thank you very much for that, Arjay.
Not a problem. Thank you for asking me about it.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.